Hey everyone, welcome to Artcasters number 89, and we are here with Joshua Kemble.
Hi.
And we have a special guest, Holly Brown.
Hey,
Hey Holly.
Hey.
So yeah, it's been a while since you've been on the show, and a lot's kind of happened since then, as far as your YouTube channel and everything. And we definitely want to talk about that, but I think we want to kick it off by talking about your Kickstarter, because you have a Kickstarter going on right now. And so have you worked on your pitch? Because I know you're trying to hone that down. All right.
I'm still pretty bad at it, so just give me points. So basically, Purgatory is about a religious cult where every solstice they sacrifice someone, and that is the pitch. It's short now.
No, I mean I like that, because you get so many comments. Sometimes I'll leave a comment and I won't expect to answer because you get so many comments. But I did hear that you kind of pitched it once and you added that element that I wasn't even aware of, because I'm one of those crazy people that wait till the print copy comes out before I read comics. Mm-hmm. But I have already ordered. Kickstarter's already reached its goal, so I know I'll get my copy and everything. But yeah, when I heard that was something I didn't know about it, and to me that was really powerful, because I think too, and hopefully this isn't a disparaging comment, but it kind of reminded me of say Hunger Games or something, because with the whole trivia thing and all that. So
it is like a dystopian like that.
Yeah.
So that makes total sense, and I just avoided it for a long time, adding it in the pitch, because I felt like it was a big spoiler, but the book is gonna be 290 pages, so I feel like one spoiler in the thing to get people to know what it's about is okay, because otherwise it would be how do I that's the main thing that makes the characters have a motivation, so mentioning it is good, I guess. I don't know. It was really tough for me to figure that out. I still don't think it's amazing. I still need to work on the pitch to make it somewhat interesting.
I think also if you could also work the angle of basically these two people are in love, and it's kind of a forbidden love, and against as far as in the church's eyes and stuff, if you can kind of work that into that as well. But it's definitely a lot better. I definitely like the whole angle of the sacrifice, because anyone can kind of put themselves into that, oh man, what if that was me? What if I was in that situation, or if I was in a world where that actually happened, So
it's just for a long time when you read it, I think it's not even, I think that's at the 200 page mark, so for a long time when you read the comic, you don't even know what they're talking about, so I always kind of am really hesitant to give that detail away, because it was such a big in the story, but it's kind of necessary, I think, in order to just sell the book.
And I think that might even be a page turning kind of thing too, because you're gonna that instantly is gonna make people want to get to that part in the story, which will make them read 200 pages, which is kind of awesome. So
plus it gives you context, because some things, if you hear that, because I don't want to be I wrote it in a way where it's because sometimes you hear premises like this, and the characters, when they talk about it, they make it just so, they basically spell it out for you, kind of and then he'll be sacrificed, but that's not actually how people talk, They don't talk like they're explaining it to somebody, they talk like an actual conversation. So throughout the whole build-up, you don't really know what they're talking about necessarily. You know it's bad, but you don't know it's that. So I don't know. I guess giving it context helps.
Yeah, my book has a similar thing that at first I was kind of not wanting to kind of give away, but my book's a lot shorter. But at the end of the first issue, the kids find themselves up in this tree, and then it's surrounded by zombies. So, but I kind of a lot of times will give that in my pitch, as far as it's when I say it's like Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead, because if you've seen Night of the Living Dead, they're held up in this farmhouse, and it's surrounded by zombies. So I'm thinking, well, what if it was kids, but it's a treehouse and everything? And that's only a small part of it. I mean, it goes on after that, but that seems to be a good hook. it's like, what if you're a kid in a treehouse and you're up there and it's surrounded by zombies? What do you do? Type of thing. So it's a little bit of a spoiler, but I think it helps sell the book. So sometimes I think you got to do that. Plus, like you said, if you've got much more story to tell, you know, and plus it also, I think it creates expectation, because sometimes even if you know something's going to happen, if you've heard the pitch and everything, you're kind of waiting for when it's kind of revealed anyway. So,
I mean, and when you look at like movie previews, like not current ones, because current ones are like kind of a bad example as to what not to do, because I watch a lot of
give everything away.
They give everything away, but certain movie trailers, like they give enough away to where it's not like, you know what's gonna happen, but it's not like detrimental. So I don't know, I just see it as like, you gotta know what's going on to want the book, because otherwise I just have no idea how I'd explain it without it sounding convoluted. So yeah.
And I mean, like, if you were doing a modern movie trailer, then your pitch would be like, this is the person who gets sacrificed, you know? Like, yeah,
it'd be really obnoxious.
Yeah.
I mean, and I also don't want to, like, conflate the, like, it being, like, super gay either. Like, that's one thing. I mean, Simon and Damien are the main characters, and they're gay, okay? But, like, I don't want to, like, fluff that up too much, because it's really not like a huge element. I mean, it is, but it's more like the fact that they can't be together kind of thing. So I might include some of that, like what Scott was talking about with the forbidden part, but I don't know. I'm not an expert in pitching stuff.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I definitely think you've definitely honed it quite a bit. So, because before you're like, I don't know what this is.
I mean, funny. You'd think me working on it for this long, I'd actually know how to talk about it, but no.
That's really the surprising things to me, because like that's one thing that I really early on tried to figure out how to do, and I'm still working on it. Like a couple weeks ago, we had Jeremy Burley on, and he was really good at pitching all his stuff. And I'm still learning different ways, you know, to pitch something. But it's just amazing how many creators out there really can't pitch their book, and like you said, they've got so much time invested in it, but they still can't sum it up, you know. And maybe that's because they're so attached to it, and there's so many things. Like you always get those people that have these huge epics, and they try to pitch their book, and you're just standing there like waiting for them to take a breath, so you can like, oh, okay, cool, I'll buy one.
Well, I mean, it's kind of just like when you hear like a summary of anything, it sounds so much more simple than it like actually is. Like when you hear a summary of Harry Potter, you're like, that's stupid, you know? But when you read it, you're like, oh, it's actually like really great. So I try to like eliminate the stupid factor. Like it just sounds so stereotypical when I pitch it. I'm like, well, it's not like that. But it is when you pitch it like that, I guess.
It's tough too, because like when I think about it, it's like the things I have an easier time describing are books that I kind of like. But to get somebody, and this is books I haven't even written or anything, you know, it's just like if I'm just describing a book to somebody, it's easier to describe the plot of a book I didn't like or a book that I kind of like. But a book that I like really love, it's so hard to describe. Eventually, I usually end up telling the person, you just have to check it out. It's worth it, you know?
Yeah, that's my generic go-to. Just read it. You know me. Just read it. Yeah. You can't do that when you're pitching it to somebody. Like, just exactly. You know me. Read it.
Like, I know this is good because I worked on it. You know, like
yeah. You can't do that. So
it's difficult. So much. Yeah. I think your pitch is great because I think it's short enough to get people asking questions. You know.
I just hope when I pitch it, I'll just like flip through it a little bit, and then that'll be, you know. That'll be the way to sell it, because, you know, you can look at it when it's finished and then decide that way.
And it's a webcomic, so most of it's available online, right?
Yeah, pretty much all of, well, except for like 10 pages right now are all available online because I'm still working on those 10 pages. But yeah, as I make it, I put it out and it's for free to read. So
yeah, and that's always a good selling point. And you know, some people might say, you know, well, if it's on free, if you tell people that it's for free, are they going to really contribute? And there are people like me who want that print version. You know, that's just how they read comics. And people that want to support you as well. So I
just see it like it's kind of like the crack model, you know, like your first first batch, here you get one for free, and then you'll just keep coming back. That's how I describe that model. It's kind of like you get it for free, but eventually you're gonna want a physical one.
Yeah,
I do it all the time. I'll read like a webcomic, and I'm like, oh, this is so nice, but I don't want to spend money, and then eventually I just end up buying the physical ones.
Yeah. Well, it's almost that freemium model in a way, because like I used to work I worked for a company and we did like social games, like Facebook games and things like that, and that was kind of that model where the game's free, but if you want to level up, or if you want to do that fast, you gotta pay money. So it's like,
yeah, like that flippin' cat game, I swear, like Neko Atsumi. I don't know if you've ever heard of that game, but it was so addicting. I wanted it's crack. That model is terrible, but it's great. So not good if you have children.
Children playing it, or just
because kids will just be like, oh, I'm like a giant man child, so like I'll be like, well, it's $1, but then you just keep clicking it, like, okay, well, $2, whatever. It's a stupid app. Why? But it works, so
So I know Josh had some questions. He wanted to get into kind of how you started with comics and stuff like that. But I wanted to, because one thing I wasn't clear on. So this Kickstarter is for the first half of Purgatory, right?
Yeah.
So is that where you're at now, or do you still have half the book to do, or have you pretty much, or are you way beyond that?
I'm like 20 pages into the next book. Like what I'm working on right now is the next book stuff. So
okay.
I'm not like done with it yet.
Yeah. Okay. Because I for some reason I thought you were closer, because I know you're already sort of planning your next one, which really kind of intrigues me as well. But it's hard not. You don't want to jump ahead before you're done finishing this project.
It's so hard for me to not like work on the next one. You have no idea. But so to avoid me working on it completely, I just have been working on character reference sheets for the next one. So that'll just postpone my desire to work on it. Yeah. Because I hate making character reference sheets. So, but the reason you probably think I was farther ahead is because, I don't know, as I've worked on Purgatory, I've just gotten a lot faster on pages. Like when I first started working on it, it would take me like forever to finish like one page. And that was when the art was like shit, and I didn't know, it was partially because I just didn't know how to panel anything. But as I've started working on it, it's like you just get into the zone, and like, I don't know, my current, like, I guess, schedule of like how fast I can get it done. Not this month, because it's been kind of whack, but all the months leading up to this month, it's been like 15 pages every 2 weeks. So that's kind of like how fast I've been getting it done. So by like my calculations based off of that rate, I would have it done by the end of the summer. But now it's going to be done probably in like October, because I jacked it up.
Yeah, for as big as the book is, I mean, that's pretty impressive, the amount of pages that you produce in a week on average. So
yeah, but it is black and white, so it is a little.
Well, my book's black and white.
Yeah, but I don't know.
I know you don't want to. You want to downplay it. Yeah.
Well, a lot of things come into play, I think, with like the different types of comic. I think it really, like I don't know, it's hard to explain, but certain comics are harder to make just by the type of comic it is. Like yours is probably harder to do because it's faster paced, I think. Like that's stuff that people don't really understand, is that like the reason why these comic artists that like do Batman and stuff get paid so much or get paid more is because those pages are fucking hard to do. like most of this is just like dialogue, like, oh, so hard, So, I mean, a lot of my comic is just kind of like talking heads. Like it's not busting through windows or anything crazy perspective.
I don't know, because like from what I've seen in your comic, you have a lot of like establishing shots and like a lot of different backgrounds and scenery and stuff.
Yeah, but like
pages that aren't red. But yeah, it's like you know, it doesn't look like that easy. How long did it take you initially when you were first starting, like, to finish a page?
Oh, it took me like 2 days a page, and that was me like really, really trying. Now I kind of just like half-assedly. I mean, that sounds bad, but yeah. I don't know. It was also because I was just not good at like the fundamentals of art. Like my art, like between last year and now, I really tried to like focus on like anatomy and just, you know, not fucking around and just getting it right. Yeah. So by working on that, it just made it faster to do all this stuff. But yeah, it took me like 2 days of like me like dying to get a page done before. So now it's like less intense.
Well, the other thing, go ahead, Josh.
No, it's cool. You go ahead.
All right, I was just gonna say the other thing that you've kind of been a convert as far as before, you were pretty against doing thumbnails, and now you've started doing thumbnails, and
yeah, that helps. Well, I don't know. It's hard to describe, but like for some reason, like because I could draw it, I don't know how to explain this, but I had the full page in front of me, like what it was gonna be. So I basically just wasted a lot of time drawing it out completely, and then I would, if I fucked it up, it basically, yeah, thumbnails are just so I don't waste time. But I don't know. Now I just kind of, I don't like doing thumbnails, but they're just like so necessary at this point that I just have to do them. Yeah, because it just makes it faster. Like it's not really, I hate doing it. I really don't like doing them, but if it makes me not have to waste like an hour, which that doesn't sound like a long time, but an hour of like you just fucking around is you fucking around, nothing getting done. So yeah, I don't know. I just really don't like doing them.
Yeah, but there is sort of an added benefit, and that's that, like, if you look at what Holly's drawing right now, that those layout, those pages, she sells those. She's created books on like comic book layout pages and thumbnail pages and things like that, like books that you can buy off of her store. So it's almost like people see you working in that, and you can actually buy that. So it's like you're kind of advertising for yourself as you're showing off your thumbnails and stuff.
Yeah, this is like the roughs. Like basically, this is kind of like my new system, because I've gone through like 3 different phases of like how I've made the comic. Because before it was completely traditional, except for the lettering, which would basically mean I have to like do everything, you know, light box and all that stuff. Now I kind of just do like thumbnails, and this, which is basically like, it's got like formatted things on each page to have the thumbnails be like at the right size. So then I do the thumbnails on this, and then I work in this book that has like the roughs. It's a little bigger than the actual size of the book. Because one thing that I really hate is when you read a comic and there's so many flippin' panels on the flippin' page, I really can't stand it. It drives me insane. So I just try to like limit it to where it's not overcrowded. Yeah. So having it just slightly bigger than the actual size of the book forces you to not have too many panels, because that was the problem when I did the book. When I was working on pages that were full digital, was that I just kept adding panels to the page because there's no physical restriction. So that's why I went back to doing the roughs traditionally, because I have that limitation. Because I know myself, I will just keep working on it stupidly, even though it doesn't make sense. So this is my new system, which it works better than digital, and it works better than just roughing it out and not thumbnailing. So far it's working. So, and then like in the sidebar, I just put the script, so I just know what's going on, but I haven't written it for these pages yet because the script is all the way over there and I'm not going to grab it.
That's cool. So do those sell pretty good for you then?
So far, yeah. I've sold like 25 of them. So yeah, not like killing it, but not amazing. I mean, not disgustingly sad. And I for the amount of people who actually make comics, I was like, wow, that's a lot of people who actually make comics.
I would feel that I would imagine that that's probably a small segment of your audience, people that actually create comics. So, but that's cool. And I'll probably have to get a copy myself and try it out. But I think it's cool that you're selling, because I'm planning on doing the same thing, but doing like digital tools for comics, like whether it's brushes or just like some kind of a panel layout system or something that I can sell digitally. But I think I think comic artists need more
tools. There's a lot of like comic stuff that I'm just like, oh man, I wish this existed. And I'm like, well, why not make it exist? Like,
exactly. And it's so, I mean, it's so easy nowadays. If you just do it, you can almost make everything. There's so many. I mean, before, like when I was younger, I mean, before the internet hit and everything, and I wouldn't know anything about manufacturing or where to go to get certain things. Now, like, everything's at your fingertips. I mean, if you want to make something, you can figure out how to make it. I mean, and you do a lot of that stuff. I mean, some of the stuff that you come up with, and that you say, oh, I think I'm going to sell this, and then it's an idea, and like a week later you've already got them in your store. So it's,
that's also just because I like to make stuff. I know a lot of people who just like can't be bothered with doing it because it's a lot of work to like get stuff manufactured and stuff. Like, I think that's why a lot of people just stick to like the same old with their store stuff, like prints and whatever the basic thing is. But I don't know, I just think it's, whenever I have an idea on something, I'm like, well, gotta do it or it'll eat me alive. So yeah, it's like I guess it's just because I know where to get crap made, which is just like the worst. It's the coolest and the worst thing ever, because you're like, oh man, I have like all these tools available, but things cost money.
Yeah.
Dang it. So, I mean, with printing, with the like Create Space stuff, it's like all the real work is just to format stuff. And I'm like, I know how to use InDesign. That's not hard. Like, just go do it.
Yeah, so like, actually, that is kind of I have to ask about Create Space, because that's what I'm thinking about using for mine. And how long does formatting take? Like, you format it on InDesign?
I format it in InDesign.
And then just export it as PDFs and upload it? Or I'm sorry, I'm curious.
Oh, yeah. Like, just as like a general thing, I made this like comic template thing in like a day, and it was available to buy on Amazon that day. So like, yeah, it's pretty fast if you know how to use InDesign. The first book I made, which was the sketchbook compilation book, I like was so shit at InDesign that I didn't use it, and that's why it took so long. So if you use InDesign and you know how to use InDesign, then it's really fast, but otherwise it'll take you forever. And there is like a file limitation, but it's like if you export it with like certain settings on InDesign, I don't remember what just the like generic export on InDesign, you can like surpass that data thing. I don't know. The data thing is like for certain Adobe files. It's weird.
Interesting.
But if you know InDesign, you're good.
But they give you the specs and stuff on Create Space to InDesign file.
You can depending on the type of book size that you want, you can download. Well, first they'll give you like the cover file. Like, this is like so basic, So no, this took me no time, but you'll make the cover separate from the interior, and the interior is just like basic book formatting. Like, you have like a 0.35 spacing in the margins, and then you have a 0.5 spacing for the bleed lines. Like, that's just stuff that is basic.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you probably already have that set up for your comic if you have like American. Well, you are bigger than American Standard. But I'm sure you've set it up for bleeds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not rocket science. I mean, and InDesign really isn't that hard. Like, I think if you know anything about Photoshop, you could probably learn InDesign and probably like the basics of InDesign in 20 minutes. Like, I don't know why people are so scared of it. Like, it's just frustrating sometimes because it's slow.
it's frustrating and it's slow, and a little bit of the preview can be kind of weird sometimes. But you're right. Like the second, like if you're familiar with Adobe, like because we use it at my work to set up catalogs and stuff on a yearly basis, and it's like I forget InDesign because
I have to have sticky notes on my. I have sticky notes on my screen to do like basic stuff, like how to resize stuff, because I forget, because InDesign is just so random.
Yeah, but like once you play around with it for like an hour or so, like you start getting the hang of it, and then like and once you've used it, because you're going to be using it for books, it's like, you know, it's mainly for anybody watching who hasn't used it, who might be intimidated. It's like it's not as crazy as it seems. There's some weird things. The auto formatting stuff, that stuff I always ask my team because they know that stuff better than I do. But it's pretty, yeah, it's pretty cool. That's good to know. I'm glad they use InDesign. So when you export it, sorry, total boring stuff. But when you export it, you export the InDesign file itself, or you export PDFs from
a PDF.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like rocket science. Yeah. I mean, I've seen people who like avoid formatting their own stuff, and I'm like, just learn how to do it. It's not that hard. Like, you're gonna need to learn how to do it anyway. Yeah. Like for just basic art stuff, like what if you want to make like a little booklet of like your portfolio? We'll just learn how to use the program. It's I don't know. It just frustrates me when people like are just so against just learning something that's like not that hard. Like just learn it. It's like people who avoid learning Illustrator. I'm like, it sucks at first, but you'll learn it and then it's fine.
Yeah. And actually Illustrator's like it's interesting because like the more you learn of those things, the easier it is to learn the next one.
Yeah, like, it's like when I first learned Photoshop, I was just like, what the hell do I do? And then I learned Premiere Pro and I was like, oh, this is just like Photoshop. And it's just like all of the Adobe stuff kind of correlates in little ways, so it gets just easier.
Yeah, we have a comic-related question I was gonna read. This is from Yellow Kill SC. I was wondering how you guys get critiques for your comics. Do you have a few people you trust read through, or do you usually recruit different people? So, well, your stuff's online, Holly, so you post it.
I just let people, rip it apart and tell me I spelled stuff wrong.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I do mine as like floppies first, because I don't really have anyone. I mean, I have like my girlfriend's a writer and she's like a grammar Nazi, so I'll have her look it over as far as for spelling and stuff. But when and I'll even know I'll kind of notice stuff myself after I like printed it. Like I'll notice like I left the glasses off a character or something like that. But when it's in print form, when it's direct, if it's print on demand, you can go and make those changes. I've made a few changes here and there each time I print a new run. But my ultimate goal is to have the trade. So having those floppies out there and then getting feedback from that, then I can go if I ever do get around to completing it and putting it on a trade, then I can make all those changes. And like I know, Holly, you make a ton of. I mean, you were going through and changing the outfit on like your major characters. So.
I mean, that's like an extreme edit, but to me, it's just sort of like, just for consistency reasons, I'm just like, let's just do it. I have the time. I mean, the Kickstarter is over in a month, and it's over in 1 month. So like, I just will spend that month making the final worth it, Mm-hmm. I don't know. I was originally kind of like against all edits, which yes, I'm against editing it to like being so fragile about your stuff to the point where you don't create it. Yeah. Like when you're about to print it, that's a little different to me. That's like, you got to make sure it's polished a little bit because it's in print.
Do you have people that are kind of willing, without being jerks about it, just to offer suggestions and tell you, people, you need to correct this?
I have like 5 or so people who are basically like the Holly editor people.
That's cool.
But in general, like I am just like the worst with spelling.
You can't be the worst because I'm the worst, but.
And it's like my grammar's fine. It's like Usually the sentence structure's all there, and then I'll just like misspell ladder 12 times.
Yeah. I think that like that's happened to me. Like, so I tend to have like my mom's an English teacher, so I would have her check my stuff, but it gets a little risque, and my mom's older, so it's like I'll have my sister. We're both English majors, and then I have a couple trusted friends that are just like brutally honest, and usually they'll hit me up on like story beats. But there have been so many times where, like, you know, and it'll be like a grammatical error I hate that I've made, and I never would make, like adding, like using two, T-O-O instead of two. Stupid grammar errors or spelling errors, and like only online have I found out about those. And I'm always like, you know, you're never really thankful for somebody who's just like, you suck, and that's their comment. It's like, yeah, that didn't really, okay, thanks, that didn't really help. But if they comment and they're like, that spelling error is right there, you're like, yes, thank you. Like,
I know, I'm always so grateful for it. I'm like, please, if you see a spelling error, tell me. By being nice, you're actually making it shittier. Like, just tell me and I can fix it like in 2 seconds. But yeah, certain things I like always leave out Simon's glasses because I draw it last, and I'm like, oh man. So like, I don't know, I'm not like the most consistent in certain things, and it drives some people crazy. They're like, I hate how that glass of water on that table moved 2 inches to the left in that other panel, and like, I'm like, okay, stuff like that I'm not gonna fix, but stuff that's like he's missing his glasses, okay, that's major. The spelling's wrong, that's major. If certain placement in panels is a little different, then I don't care.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing. Like, it's just you're not sweating the small stuff. You're worried about the important stuff. You know, like I think that that actually is one of those challenges that until I started really delving into making comics, I didn't even realize would be that hard. Like just keeping a character with the same T-shirt. Like, I just finished working on a page where I decided to give like one of my characters a Clash T-shirt, and then like 10 panels in, I was just like, why did I choose to have a Clash T-shirt on this character? I'm so sick of like, this stupid T-shirt. You know, it's like it's just you don't, I don't know. It's like, I guess until you do comics, it's like, or get your feet wet and really do like a long form story. Those little challenges aren't like really apparent. Like. And same with spelling errors, you know, because it's like you're not like, well, I don't know. I guess it depends because it depends on how you're doing it. But it's like it's not quite like typing up like a Word file or something, you know.
No, the way I do mine, it's almost like I don't know. I change the dialogue for certain scenes because my dialogue isn't always set in stone, because sometimes the way I thumbnail it out, the dialogue would seem really misplaced. So sometimes like where these spelling errors come in is when I've changed it, but I just don't notice that I misspelled something, and I'm like, oh man. That, and I'm just like really bad at catching mistakes like that because I don't know. I don't care. I never was like a grammar Nazi or anything, so to me it's just like whatever. People make mistakes. Although when I was reading like Catcher in the Rye, I was like, okay, that's a spelling mistake, that's a spelling mistake, that's a spelling mistake. So I kind of get it. When you notice spelling mistakes, it's just it kind of becomes the game of find the spelling mistake. You
found spelling mistakes in Catcher in the Rye?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. There's like 10. So,
really?
I mean, yeah.
Are they
a lot
like
of like
intentional or like accidental ones?
I think they're unintentional because it's like dialogue. So I don't think you would intentionally, like, it's not an accent either. I don't have the book like right next to me, but yeah.
Oh man, Salinger's probably like rolling in his grave now.
Yeah, well, even if you have like a lot of first edition books, you can spot the little, like I have a first edition Harry Potter, and there's like a couple like grammar mistakes in that too. Oh. But it's like, it's whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think she's sweating it, making her millions.
No. She's doing all right.
Yeah.
There's an angry English teacher out there. like that's I don't know, like it is hard. I think the cool thing about comics is like you're juggling so many considerations, like, you know, because like maybe you catch a spelling error and then you notice that you did the foreshortening shitty on a panel or something.
Yeah.
Too much. I don't know. What got you? Why are you continuing with comics? Is a question I like to ask cartoonists. Like, what keeps you going on it? It can't be monetary. I'm guessing.
Well, I mean, it's kind of just like I'm this far in, might as well keep going at this point. But for a long time, it was just so I could get the book done. You know, I'm kind of like nearsighted. I like things to be products, and if they're not a thing, like a physical thing, then to me it's just kind of like doesn't exist. It's just sort of, it's like when you see production art. Well, that's nice, but what's the final look like, you know? Yeah. So to me, just having comic pages isn't enough. You have to have the thing. I don't know. So that just is kind of what drives me to keep going. But it's also just kind of like I'm attached to the story, and I want to see it done.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a weird. It's just it. So have you gotten addicted to it? Do you think?
Oh yeah, it's like blood now. It's like once you start the comic path, it's you're not gonna get off the comic path.
it's those comics.
It's a succubus. It's terrible, but it's also really fun.
Yeah, it is. That's rad. Like so, like what. The architecture, it's weird. I know it's weird to mention, but it's like the architecture in your book's really cool. Like,
oh yeah.
What inspired that? Like the inside of the cathedrals and stuff. Like, it's just really cool.
Well, in general, like a lot of the times when I mention like this is like a religious cult, people think, oh, they're like a bunch of hicks and like. You, like when you think religious cult, you usually think something that's not sophisticated. So I wanted it to be kind of like any other established religion, which is what makes it so scary. So I thought, okay, well, I took a bunch of references from a bunch of different cathedrals. I have like, oh man, the book is like, I don't remember the cathedral name, but there's this cathedral. It's not like a major cathedral. It's like a, you wouldn't know it by name kind of cathedral. And I have this, it's like one in Germany. And it had like a really awesome ceiling. And I also took reference from, what is it? It's in St. Petersburg. Oh, people are yelling at me, I'm sure. It's a Russian cathedral, and the ceiling in Russian cathedrals are insanity. And most cathedrals are usually like excruciatingly detailed, and I'm kind of mad because the beginning pages I did not put as much detail as the edits, so I'm trying to edit them to be a little more detailed than how I kind of envisioned it, because again, I wasn't quite artistically there to like get the vision that I wanted. But yeah, I really like cathedrals. That's there's not like a real answer to that. Just
that's good.
Yeah.
I think like I think it's cool. I think it's cool that like I don't know. I think it's cool that you're 200 pages in. You know, you're young, like you're fairly young, and like, you're doing comics, which is like a big hurdle for a lot of people. Is just the starting and like the drive to finish. So it's cool that you have that, because it's like inevitably you're gonna get better. You know. And it's cool. It's cool to see your comics. You can see it happen. Like, although the edits have smoothed out, but it's like you can see the progress. And it's really cool for that, I think, too, just to see this development. Because the story's been pretty good from the beginning. The art's been good, but it's just gotten better and better. I don't know. It's cool to see. I think that's neat.
Yeah. It's weird because I think comics are kind of humbling in a lot of ways, because you learn really fast what you're not good at, like when you want to make a specific scene and you can't because you don't understand how to do it, it forces you to do it, which is another reason why I kind of like tell people to work on comics if they kind of suck at art is because it forces you to know what is wrong with what you're doing. Like, for a long time when I was making it, I couldn't figure out like why my perspective was so shit, and it's because I kind of explained this a couple times, but a lot of the stuff I drew leaned one direction, and it took me forever to figure out why, and it's because, well, it's for like 3 reasons really, but one thing is I would draw like this, like all flat and stupid, like, oh, I wonder why it's messed up, because I'm not seeing it at, you know, my eyes aren't looking at it directly. It's looking at it at a different angle. So that's, you just kind of, it forces you to like see what's wrong with your art in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's for somebody like me who, I guess I've always had issues polishing my work. Like, it kind of forces you to be a little more critical to certain things.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
I've experienced it too. It's like, I think the first time I ever had to draw a crowd scene was when I put one in one of my own comics, you know? And then I never was really frightened of doing a crowd scene again, because you just have to sit down and do it if you're being honest to the story you're telling, you know? Some people, this is one thing I'd say though, like if you are taking on a comic, don't back away from a panel that you can't attack yet, just attack it.
Yeah.
Because like you'll level up. Like I'm sure the first time you drew that cathedral ceiling didn't work out as well as the next time, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, to me, that's the cool thing about comics. It's a constant challenge. And then there's always rules, and there's always ways to break rules. Like, for instance, you were talking about not having a lot of panels on a page. I agree with that, but then I've seen some really brilliant stuff done with like 50 panels on a page.
Well, it's also a matter of personal preference, you know?
Yeah.
Like, some people love that look. I hate it.
Yeah,
so, and it doesn't, it also depends on the style of writing. You know, Purgatory's slow. If you put a bunch of dialogue in a slow reading thing, it's like just text dump. But if it's a fast-paced thing and you're like combating the text with action, then yeah, by all means, put a bunch of dialogue, because you're also having a lot of action. So to me, it kind of evens out. I don't know. There's a bunch of rules, but it's kind of like you have to pick the rules that make it not a shitty product.
Yeah, exactly. And like I think like that's an important thing, is like the tempo is a huge thing. So it's like, you know, you have to think about pacing, and it's like that's another one of those elements of comics. Like, how long did it take you to get the hang of pacing?
Oh man, a long time. Like, there's like the current Purgatory is not the original one, and the current Purgatory actually had like 28 pages taken out because they were all exposition, and I just thought, you know, that's not necessary, so I just took them out. It's, I don't know, pacing's really, I don't think I'm like an expert at it, because sometimes I feel like, you know, it's a little jumpy sometimes, but pacing is just something that's, I think it's more of a writing issue, less of an art issue.
Yeah.
And to me, pacing is all about, like, you have to know what happens to space it out properly. And a lot of the people who have issues with pacing are people who didn't write it out all the way.
Yep.
Like, I know what happens in Purgatory because I've written it out. If you don't know your story, then you're not going to have the pacing correctly, because you're kind of just going to nowhere. So it could be like just random. Yeah. And you also have to like know the motivations of your characters, because I think that's also why people have issues with pacing, is because they don't have their characters' personalities really down. Like, they don't really know how this character would act in this situation. So you kind of have to know why your character does what they do, and you know, what they, just basic stuff about them. So I don't know. To me, pacing is just sort of like, you have to just know your comic a little bit more in depth than like the reader does.
Sure. Yeah, and like, what about you? Like, Scott, were your first like attempts at comics, did you have them perfectly paced out?
You kind of faded away for a second at the last thing you said, Josh.
I was asking if your first attempts at comics had them perfectly paced out.
No, no, no. But I do. I similar to Holly. I mean, I don't know exactly everything that's. I know what's kind of happening at the end. So right now, this particular issue that I'm working on, which is the 4th issue, is really. I'm at that point where now I know I'm starting the middle part of the story, and now I kind of know how I need to start focusing everything else so it drives to the conclusion. Whereas before, I wasn't really at that point. But now now that I know sort of the pacing, I know how long it's going to take me. So if it's going to take me 2 more issues after this one, I know where my characters have to be at the end of this issue and then at the end of the next issue. So I kind of have. I mean, obviously I don't have the dialogue, and I don't know how everything is going to play out, but I know how it ends up. So, I think that helps.
Yeah.
Where if it's something like whether they, like a show like Lost, which I like Lost, but I don't think that when they say they knew where it was going to end up, that they actually did. So.
Yeah. I'm also like, I listen to like all these like writing things, like all these writing podcasts, because I think they're fun and, I don't know. And a lot of them, I think, kind of have this like really anti-pantsing thing where they're like, oh, you have to plan out everything in super detail. And if you don't, then you're just a hack. And I'm like, well, no, that's not really true, especially with like people like artists, because I think artists kind of have a general, it's hard when artists are also the writers, because artists, I think, kind of have a more visual understanding as to what's going to happen, but it's hard for you to articulate what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So like, whenever I listen to these writing podcast things, I'm like, well, that's true, but it's also like, that's not exactly how everyone thinks. Not everyone is like I don't remember what the type of learner it is, but the learner where you learn more with words than images. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
the other thing is, I mean, like, come on, you can't say like all writers are hacks if they pants it. I mean, like, On the Road was written in a night or 2.
Yeah.
Like on a single paper. So I don't know, right? Like, and that's a good book. So I think it just depends. Like for me, I used to try to pants it a little more often than I do now. And it's kind of like you were talking about with roughs, where it's like I used to kind of have a different idea, and then I learned the hard way, like, no, it's probably good for me to map out my story a little more clearly in pre-script. Because, like, I didn't pre-script on my first one. I just literally, like, jotted. I would do thumbnails, but that's how I'd write it. I'd just write it in thumbnails. And it ended up being a story that, like, parts that needed breathing room were really rushed. There's tons of exposition to kind of try to pull things together. And, at the end of the day, I'm like, that taught me to do the pre-planning because that's my personality. But I know a lot of brilliant artists who, like, they'll do the whole comic, like, on, just gun it. And, like, they do brilliant work. So, I think it's a personality thing with art, because, like, you can't, I also don't think you should restrict it too much, right? Because you could end up really over-limiting yourself.
Uh-huh. And that's something that I think that's why a lot of artists don't even begin their comic, is because they have this like notion that, okay, well, I have to know everything, and everything has to have like a design. And I'm like, no, not everything has to have a design. Like there's literal characters where I'm like, oh, wow, I should have designed them. There's only 5 characters in this comic and I didn't design one. Well, that's stupid. But, at least it's a comic. At least it got made. And you learn to fix that on the next try. Like just, I don't know, I guess just don't be too precious about your comic, because if you are, then it'll never get made.
Oh, yeah.
It's, to me, that's just like the most frustrating thing. It's just to hear somebody like, well, I'm working on it. I'm like, well, are you though?
Yeah, like to me, I want to see pages. That's
to me, that's the real working on it, is when I see like the actual work.
Yeah, like that's usually my reaction too, because there's a lot of people who are like, they're like working on the car in the garage, and then you look in the garage and it's this like rusted out car that has no engine. And you're like, are you really? Yeah, I'm gonna work on it someday. And then there's the Tolkien kids. Holly, you might have heard this story before, but there's like there's a couple people that I knew in like when I was going to junior college that were all writing like epic fantasy novels. And they'd have,
the ones that had their own language and everything crazy.
yeah, but they'd have like sketchbooks just stacked, like stacks of journals and books and like sketches and like they're working on this epic fantasy, and they never actually had the story. They were just building worlds. And at that point, I was like, you know, I used to role play when I was a nerdy junior high kid, you know, so I get it.
It's cool. It's awesome.
But, you know, if you want a product or you want a story, just write the story and the world building will kind of work its way in. Like, you know, like I think you're onto something with that, like with what you're talking about, where it's like you can't be too precious and you can't be too freaked out about all the details because then you'll never start, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's like finding a balance because there's definitely things with Purgatory that I don't like, and I'm paying the price by having to redraw certain things because I don't like it so much to the fact that I have to change it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. To me, it's like even something flawed is better than something that's just a production art. So, yeah. Because I follow all these artists. I'm not going to like mention their name, but she mentions that she's been working on this like comic for like, I don't know, 5 years. And she's got all this like production art for it and it looks really cool. But she's never made a single comic. And I'm like, well, don't make your first like the big one if you've never made a comic before. Like Purgatory's weird because it's super flawed, but it's the big one, you know, and it's not going to be my last one. So I don't know. It's weird. Like just make it. Don't talk about doing it. Just do it.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing on YouTube. Like, so how do we balance? Because I've had trouble with this. We're YouTube guy, you and Scott. I have trouble balancing making YouTube videos with making pages because I've chosen to take on some pages that take me a while, you know? And I find that YouTube pulls away some time from making the thing. And that, I love YouTube. So it's sort of like this, I find myself in a catch-22 with that.
Oh yeah, that's like my eternal struggle. It's like, oh, I want to make this, but I also want to like talk to people and like do other things.
Yeah.
And it can be really hard because it's like sometimes I'm like, oh, I've been working on pages for like 2 weeks and all my art that I've showed people is just shitty little doodles. But that's kind of the price I have to pay to get the comic done, which it sucks. Because a lot of people know my art, like on my YouTube channel, is just sketches. And I'm like, but I do other things. You just don't see the final stuff I do. It's like some people haven't seen like how I actually draw, just like my shitty sketches. I'm like, that's not how I draw. That's just a sketch.
Well, hopefully at some point, if they're watching your videos enough, they'll click a link and just go check it out, you know? You'd
be surprised. When I posted that, like, Kickstarter video, there was a shockingly large amount of people who are like, you have a comic? I'm like, oh my god. Really? But I don't talk about my comic as much as I should because I'm making it. So I guess that's kind of a downside, too, is when you're making something, you kind of just get caught up in it and forget to actually like promote it.
Yeah,
so
that's a struggle. Yeah, you know.
Way guilty.
I think I'm really bad at that. Like I'm really bad at promoting my comic. But hey, you know, there's stuff to read when I do promote it. So.
Well, I think that's a juggling act, and I think a struggle for like anybody making something, especially the stuff that's closer. Because like for me, I have more difficulty promoting my own comics than I used to like promoting like shirts or stuff that were like making me money. Because like and it like more directly like quicker money.
Yeah.
Because that has like an incentive and like it's like you feel that like fire under your feet. Like if I don't. At least for me, it was like kind of a drive of like, if I don't promote this, I might go broke next week or what, you know? So it was like, you had that fire to kind of make you promote it. Whereas with something that's really close to you, like a long-term project like that, like even if it has a financial reward, it's going to be like way far in the future. It's hard to, like, as you're working on this project, like, think about promoting it, you know. And I'm trying to kind of do it right this time, with like the promoting it as I go. But I have no idea if I'm doing it right, because, like, once again, I have trouble even updating YouTube because I'm like, I want to work on my comic. I don't want to edit a video, you know?
Yeah, and it's also hard to, like, know what's interesting about your stuff to promote it. It's like, okay, well, I have an art channel and I'm making a comic. Okay, cool. But translating that into a video and not it being just a giant ad is kind of hard, you know? It's like, okay, well, how do I make this, like, I guess so people can get something out of it? And it's while also kind of explaining your comic to get people to read it. It's hard. Yeah, I think that's why, like, people like Mark Crilly are so successful, is because he found a way to incorporate his comic into his videos so much so that he, like, I think that's pretty much how he sells his books. Not because it's on the shelf by Dark Horse, but because in every single one of his flippin' videos, he's like, check out my manga, check out this, you know?
Yeah.
And I think when I have the physical book, I'll be more willing to do that, because when you don't have something physical to show to people that's, like, done, I think I don't know. For me, it's harder to tell people to read it or to look at it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, like, as far as, like, Mark Crilly, I mean, it's and that's kind of what I mentioned earlier as far as your sketchbooks and stuff that you, well, what's the actual term for them? I forgot what you.
This is the comic roughs, and then I also have a comic thumbnails.
Yeah,
I have, like, a big one, and then I have, like, a smaller one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, but that's the same thing. I mean, you're using your own products to show people how to do something. And
and I'm not gonna lie, the only reason I did that was so when I work on my comic, like the roughs, I can be like, oh hey, if you want to, like, buy the rough sketchbook thing, you can, as I show them the comic part, which is the interesting part. It's kind of just like how people who use Wacom products, that's how they sell Wacom products, is like the pretty art, even though, you know, having an expensive tablet doesn't mean you'll have pretty art.
Yeah, because I've always been real bad, like, about about just, especially when I was doing the 100 Days of Making Comics, but also it almost became part of the format where I would just pitch my comic. But, you know, I'm trying to maybe not do that as much, but do it in the way, like you're saying, like, show me working on a page, and while I'm telling you, you know, how to do a certain technique or something, I'm talking about my characters, you know, and what's going on in the scene and everything, so people can kind of get an introduction to my work, you know. So all that stuff works. Yeah. So
it's just so people, like, they get something out of it, because I don't get anything out of, like, hearing somebody talk about their comic unless it's, like, writing or something, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of just like approaching YouTube like any other video. It's just difficult when it's something like a book, basically. Like, a comic is basically a book, you know, and trying to tell people to read it is difficult.
Yeah. So
it's such a balance too. I mean, you seem to have a better handle on it, like the balance between kind of, because you're productive, you're putting out pages, and you're managing to put out YouTube videos, you know. So that's why it's like it's an interesting thing to me, because, like, I personally, like, frankly, I have no idea what I'm doing on YouTube, but I'm having fun with it. But I have no idea what I'm doing, you know?
Oh yeah. Well, it makes it sound like I actually, like, do real like, most of my videos are just dick jokes, like, oh wow, Holly, you're really putting in effort there. Like, I don't know.
They're good dick jokes. And that's
so I mean, I don't know, it sounds like it's like this big complicated thing, but it's really not. It's just like treating people who follow you like people and not like someone to advertise to, which is just basic, you know, online what is it, etiquette. Yeah,
that makes sense.
So, you know, as far as YouTube goes, since we're on this subject, so the last time you were on, you probably had, what, maybe like 11,000 followers?
I don't know. Yeah, sure.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And now you're at like what, 130 something maybe?
Yeah.
And and I don't know, and you maybe have noticed, from other YouTubers that you watch, but I don't think I've ever seen that kind of growth in that amount of time before. Like, I think, wasn't it just a month that did, I mean.
Yeah, it was like straight up 1 month, and it was just like insanity.
Yeah.
I went from like, it was like, 10,000 to like 50,000, and then 100,000 like in like a couple days. It was insane. It was mostly because I put out just like, I don't know. At that point, I just stopped kind of giving a shit about YouTube, which is really funny because you would think like if you don't care about your YouTube channel, you would lose subscribers, but I had the opposite effect because a lot of the times I just kind of had this battle with YouTube in my mind, like, should I be myself, which is, dumb jokes, or should I just kind of have the safe content that everybody's used to with artists? Like, I've been described as like the opposite of Bailey J, which is, I don't want to like bash her or anything, but like she's very safe, Yeah. But my personality just does not fit that. So every time I made a video, I was just kind of cringing, like, this is not what I would say. I would say this a lot more bitchy, So yeah. I felt like kind of constrained. And I just was like, you know what? Fine. YouTube doesn't make me that much money, so might as well just like have fun. And I did, and people liked the stupid videos. So yeah.
Yeah.
It's also kind of like a weird dichotomy with my channel, because sometimes I'll have like a video that's like me showing you something cool, like that's actually like worth something, and then the other time it's like something real dumb. So like I guess people got stuff out of the dumb videos and also the videos that I spent time on. So I don't know, my channel's real whack. Like
no, but it's personality, and I think that's what really sells, what sells a YouTube channel, maybe, and it had not anything to do with art. I mean, your art's great, but I think personality can sell, that's what's gonna, build your audience. And I don't know where I kind of fall in that spectrum, because I'm kind of like, I definitely want to come across as genuine and real, but I'm also sort of amping up, my normal personality when I do videos. But I'm hoping that my real personality kind of shows through. But I don't know, that's for everyone else to determine,
Yeah, well, I mean, people, like when you make YouTube videos, of course, like certain things, you're amping up a little bit. Like I say like really stupid shit in my YouTube videos because I think it'll be funny, I mean, I do say stuff like that in real life, but it's not like something I would say to my mom, Right. So you kind of just have to determine like who you're talking to. Are you talking to a kid? Are you talking to an adult? Are you talking to like a classroom? Like, are you a teacher? Are you a friend? That kind of thing. And to me, I just think the way I talk to people, it's like a friend speech, This is not how I would talk to like old people, I don't know. It's weird. Because there's certain channels where I'm like, I would really prefer you not to talk casually, like Mark Crilly. Like, I don't want to know what he sounds like in real life. I just want him to sound like the teacher guy,
Yeah.
Because that's his shtick. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like podcasting in a way. You pick your persona, even though it might be you. It's still kind of like an exaggerated version of you.
For sure. Yeah, it's interesting. Like one of the things that I'm actually kind of restrained by when I do YouTube, and I'll be transparent about it, is like because of my workplace, because I'm on salary, I'm considered a representative of the company I work for.
Yeah, that would be scary. I
have certain I cuss a lot. Not really. But I do a lot, and I have to be really careful about that, just to like not reflect badly on my business, on the business I work for. So like that's a weird thing. Like I've never experienced that because I was kind of in a similar position to like you in the sense that I was sort of self-employed for a while, you know, and so I was used to being able to say whatever I wanted whenever I wanted. So it's kind of an interesting like thing. Like in my art, I can be unfiltered and stuff because I can argue that, you know, like. But in my persona, like on my YouTube channel, I can't go off the rails, which I've had. Not that I would go off the rails because I'm not like a crazy person, you know. But and that's not saying crazy people are the only people who go off the rails. But I think it's I'm still trying to personally, like on my own channel, I'm still trying to find that niche, you know. And it's where I can be more like direct, and I think the more I do, the more I get comfortable with the camera. Because it took me like a long time to even get comfortable talking to camera. You know, it's weird.
I think it's just also kind of I think that's also why a lot of people on YouTube do the filtering. It's also just like, you know, a lot of these people who are artists want to work for people like Disney or like, you know, big companies that they know if they talk like that, they're not going to get that job. But to me, I'm like, with the type of art I've drawn, yeah, they're not going to hire me, you know? So I'm kind of like, I've kind of resigned to the point where I'm like, well, I'm going to be myself no matter what. So if I worked for these companies, they'd probably end up firing me anyway. So
no, those companies aren't going to be like deterred because you had a YouTube video or something. Like I think with freelance, it's a little different. Like meaning like if somebody wanted to hire you, like what you're doing, you're building a brand. So like, you know, if Disney ever wanted to hire you, they'd hire you because they like your videos, you know? Like, I mean, seriously, I don't think that'll be an issue.
I don't know. But that's kind of the fear though, you know, like,
oh yeah.
It's hard to describe that. It's not just like, I'm not saying just Disney, but just any company really.
Oh yeah.
People are just scared to say anything. Like that's why a lot of people don't have any kind of racy art or art that they would usually make, you know, because they're like, okay, well that's too racy. I'll just stay safe. Yeah. And sometimes I'm like, it depends on your personality. But to me, it's like, if I'm safe, my art, not all the time, but a lot of my art tends to lean in the edge. So that's just how it is. It's not like intentional, but that's kind of how my art goes. And some people are just naturally more family friendly. So I don't know. To me, it's just sort of like just being honest as to like who you are, but don't be like disrespectful or like outright offensive for no reason.
Yeah. It's funny because I think like people who like, at least so far, I'm a very small YouTuber, but at the same time, the people who've checked out my work from YouTube have been a little surprised when they read it because it's like pretty heavy. And it's
it's real like, deep.
Yeah, and it's not all like, oh hi, I'm so happy and positive, which is funny because I'm actually a pretty positive person, but I write really depressing shit, you know. So it's like, I don't know. It's interesting trying to find that kind of window, and I think I don't know. Like I think you've done that very effectively, and I think that's really kind of cool to see in your art because even your dialogue and your comment really reflects your personality.
Yeah,
and I think that's really cool. Like that's cool to see, and it's clear enough to where it doesn't seem like you have a filter, you know. Which I think, you know, I think it's, I don't know. I think that's kind of a cool thing. I don't know, Scott, do you have like a balance you have to strike, or like have you figured that out, like that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I sort of made a conscious decision, like when I started YouTube, that I wasn't like going to curse. So it's kind of funny because it's like if I'm just casually talking to somebody and maybe they see me on YouTube or after the show, if I curse or something, like, oh, you curse, and like, well, yeah, I'm a human being, but yeah, I don't know. For me, it's just I've always kind of. The kind of work I do, I tend to gravitate more to all ages. I mean, there's some stuff in my book there's stuff in my book where the kid's looking at a Playboy and he's saying, oh, I like girls with big boobies and stuff like that. I mean, it's just like stuff you would talk like you were a kid, but that's like, if you've ever seen a
character.
Movie. Yeah, and if you've ever seen a movie like Goonies that's that 80s, I want that kind of personality and stuff. So, but yeah, I don't know. I just kind of, I want to keep my stuff semi sort of all ages.
Yeah.
So
that
that's
makes sense. Yeah.
And everybody thinks all ages is like boring. That's not necessarily true. It depends. Some people, when they do all ages, I'm like, okay, that's, you know, for toddlers. But all ages doesn't necessarily mean like it's the most boring thing in the world. Like a lot of the stuff that I like is all ages. Like I watch a show called Steven Universe, which is literally made for like 10-year-olds. Okay, like it doesn't mean it's just because it's made for everyone doesn't mean people of different, you know, age groups can't enjoy it.
Oh,
like, yeah, it's I don't know. Trying to explain that to people is like the hardest thing ever. Like every time I explain I watch cartoons, I'm like, it's just shut up. You can enjoy things that aren't like it's like that's like saying, oh, all PG-13 movies are only for 13-year-olds. No one else. Yeah, like no, that's not how it works.
I think that's a statement that like somebody who's kind of a young adult would make more often than like somebody like art like in because like you get to an age where you just are like, yeah, I like some cartoons, like you know, like and I think it's cool that you didn't have to have that. Like in my early 20s, I think I would have been more shy about like admitting some of the like young adult stuff I liked because I was just like. For me at that time, I think I was posing more than I realized, you know? Whereas like, and I think it's cool you don't have a problem like admitting that because like, you know, you get to a certain point where it's like, I mean like, I can't think of like an age gap in like what's good. Like sometimes I read kids books to my kid, like I just read the Pigeon books to my son, like when I put him to bed. And there were like these books called Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus, and they're by Mo Willems. And they're some of the most brilliant writing I've read. And it's like literally the premise of trying to convince a pigeon not to drive a bus. And it's like a book for toddlers. And yet it's brilliant. And if I could come up with something like that as an illustrator and writer, I mean, there's a reason that guy has like 1 billion books in bookstores because he's brilliant. You know, like, I don't know, like, to me, Sendak's deeper than half of the stuff I'm writing. You know, like Where the Wild Things Are is deeper than the comic I'm writing. You know?
Yeah,
So it's,
it's all about like I guess the messages that are being conveyed, not necessarily like the age rating of those messages. So it's like you like saying a curse word really doesn't mean anything. The only reason people are so against it is because, you know, that's not polite. It doesn't necessarily make it any more adult. Any 12-year-old can curse. It doesn't mean it's adding any adult quality to it. I don't know. That's like getting into their like what makes something adult. What makes something for children. What makes something.
Oh, for sure.
And that's something I really struggled with Purgatory because I'm like, oh, what age rating is this? It's hard.
I think it's hard because you're slightly writing, I mean, it's fiction, but it's a little slice of life-y. And I think that's a hard genre to try to pin down. Like, who to sell it to, you know, who are you marketing to? It's tough. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know who to say with that either. Because I'm thinking about it, it's like, I don't know who that.
I just said late teen because I feel like just based off of the pacing, a 10-year-old wouldn't want to read it, you know? And there is some scenes that I'm like, this is not appropriate for a 10-year-old, you know? So I don't know. So
I've had that moment at conventions where I've had like a kid come and start flipping through my comics, and I write like auto-bio stuff that's like pretty confessional and like talks about a lot of adult stuff. So it's like I've actually had to take my book from a kid going, well, this isn't like this. And his parents are like, no, I don't care. And I'm like, I do. Just don't have him look at it. Not for him. Like,
when it comes to like teens, though, I'm kind of just like, if you're like, I don't know, it's hard to say for me because I read, it's like when you're like really young.
Yeah.
I think that's like inappropriate to give a kid something that's like clearly they're really not mature enough to understand or should see. But like when you're a teen, I think that's when it kind of gets like into that murky waters for me because I'm like, well, based off of the stuff that I read when I was a teen, you should be able to read like, you know, stuff that's like NC-17, which that is not something, you know. So I don't know. To me, it's sort of like, I'll say it's for this group, but if this group buys it, I won't say anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I grab most of the comic books that I pick up now that I gravitate to are like usually probably what most people would consider marketing to like teenage girls. Like I'll buy, you know, I like Squirrel Girl and all that stuff, and I bought this comic Gwenpool, which is kind of like Gwen Stacy version of Deadpool, just because the artist is one of my favorite artists. And somebody told me that they said that the writing sucked, and so, but I bought it for the art and I read it and I'm like, this is super fun. I love it. So I don't know. It's just like, even though it's, you know, technically a guy in his 40s, that's probably not the actual market for that book, but it just brings me back to the stuff I love, you know, just super fun storytelling and things like that. So I don't know. It's kind of what you're in. Maybe I just have like a Peter Pan complex and I want to be young forever, but I don't know.
Well, it's also like, I think most artists, if they like young adult from like a young age, like young adult books, you're kind of stuck in young adult your whole life, because young adult, the way it's written, it's like, it's not high fantasy a lot of the time, because high fantasy can get a little convoluted, I think. Yeah. Like, I hate reading books that are like so high fantasy that you need to keep fucking charts to figure out what's going on. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I like
compendium and the thesaurus.
Like a lot of like stuff that's based off of D&D. I'm like, oh, I can tell that you just have the monster manual right next to you when you're writing this. It's like, I think with young adult, it's kind of good in a lot of ways, because it's simple enough for like a kid to read it, but it's also casual enough for like an adult to read it. I don't know. You shouldn't be ashamed of like what you're reading. It's whatever.
Well, and like,
I'm split, because I do think there's some young adult books and some young adult shows that like I think where it becomes problematic is when you're making stuff that's formulaic and insulting the children.
Yes.
Like, to me, like the thing you were just saying about teenagers, like people who are restricting teenagers, like I read Clockwork Orange when I was like 14, you know, like that's a heavy book to read as a 14-year-old. But it's like, as a 14-year-old, it didn't seem like a heavy book. It was a book. And it's like, I kind of got that it was fiction and it had like a moral to it and stuff. And it's like, I think people maybe get to a point where they just forget that like what kids are like what kind of terrible thoughts kids think, you know? Because like,
oh, I was terrible. When I was 12, I was like a terrible person. Like, like I'm still not nice now. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. But you're not stupid. I think when you assume that your audience is stupid, that is when, like, that's why a lot of like current cartoons I have a lot of issues with, because they just assume the kids are so stupid.
Yeah.
When they're not. They know what's going on. They know, like, especially like comedy shows for kids. I'm like, this is terrible. Not because it's like poorly written, but it's terrible because you had an opportunity to tell a better joke and you didn't, because you just undermined your audience, you know?
Yeah. And I think some of that's just like the committee thing, like there's just corporations involved and stuff, but that's the form of young adult that I don't like, is young adult that like insults the young adult reading it, you know? That's my own. I bought like a couple of like these romance books, which I've just kind of like stopped buying romance young adult, because a lot of them have this issue of basically explaining everything to you. And I'm like, you don't need to explain why they're in love. It's a romance. It's a romance, of course, you know, like he's hot. There you go. There's your reason. You don't need to explain it. It's terrible. Like I was midway through one and I just had to stop reading it because it was boring. Like, John Green, shut up. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just a lot of it's again knowing your audience but not like offending it. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Is there any young adult stuff that you hate, Scott?
I mean, it's kind of, I hate to admit this, but I don't read that much. I usually listen to audiobooks just because I'm drawing, you know. So most of the young adult stuff that I've read or listened to, I like. I mean, I'm talking about like Harry Potter and stuff like that. There's certain stuff that is just like there's so much of it out there that some of it seems a little derivative to me.
Yeah.
like I don't know, Hunger Games, like it was all right, but I don't know. I wouldn't put it in, you know, in the same category as like a Harry Potter or something. At least to me. I mean, it wasn't. You know, I had seen like Battle Royale and everything. I'm like, well, this is kind of like Battle Royale. Only Battle Royale is a lot better in my opinion. But I don't know. I like based on the concept, I liked it. But then I, you know, and I guess I'm not talking about movies now. I mean, I'm not talking about books, but like movies, like it started getting into like the Maze Runner and stuff like that, and I saw the first one of that, and like I don't know, this is, you know, I kind of saw this before, and it's nothing new.
That's like a genre now, like what is it, like
dystopian
young
future,
dystopian future. That's why I kind of avoid saying dystopian, because I'm like, oh no, then you're gonna think it's like I don't know, like not Peter Jackson, what like the Maze Runner, you know. So it's like like when I think dystopian, I think like I don't know, like fucking I'm trying to think of just what is it? Fly, damn it. Oh, I already lost my train of thought. Oh man. I don't think like shitty teen novel when I think dystopian. Dystopian to me is usually the stuff that's like a little harder to understand, and people have kind of just taken the word dystopian and applied it to like shitty teenage romance.
Yeah, but there's always good, and I don't think this falls under like young adult, but like I read or listened to rather Ready Player One, and that one I really like because it's got a lot of 80s nostalgia stuff in it, and is sort of set in that. I mean, because like one of my, you know, from a kid, when I first saw Blade Runner as a kid, I mean, that's one of the first sort of, you know, sort of that dark future and everything, and that just kind of blew me away. I mean, you know, it's a little boring for me as a kid, but just the visuals, just like, and everything you see now is kind of based on that. So I mean, I definitely love that look and feel and everything, but I guess it depends how it's you know, how you go about telling that story.
Yeah, I think Blade Runner is one of those, but I will also say Blade Runner is one of those things where I actually think the editors were correct, because the director's cut is like it's almost unwatchable in my opinion. The original version with the narrative, the voiceover was brilliant, because some editor very wisely watched that first cut and was like, people are going to fall asleep and not understand what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
Which is what, you know, kind of ties back into like that question of like who you show your work to. It's like, I always try to remind myself of stuff like that, to remind myself to have other people check out my stuff, because I don't want to be that guy who's like, my stuff is great, and then like the rest of the world is like, this doesn't make any sense. You know?
Yeah. Because I've had a couple friends who are like really, they write like a lot of stories and stuff, and I'll read over it and then I'll just tell them like very critical flaws in their writing, and they just sort of brush past it, and I'm like, I'm not saying this to be an asshole. I'm saying this because this doesn't make any sense, you know? Like, and I guess sometimes you have to, like, when you write stuff, you got to pick up on when people are trying to nicely critique you, you know? Like, sometimes people will say something like, that doesn't really make sense, or I didn't really like this part. And what they're trying to say is, this was shit, redo it. Yeah, like...
I remember... Oh, go ahead. I just remembered like one of the first comic books that I actually finished, because I would start a lot of comic books. I'm talking about a young kid, like probably 8 or something, and but I finally finished one, and you know, I went and had it, you know, printed on, you know, regular Xerox machine and everything, and did all that stuff, and I showed it to the comic book store owner, and he totally like crushed my world, because basically the premise was, it's like in this future where overpopulation was a big thing, so they tried to clone the Earth, but something went wrong, so it cloned about like 9 different Earths, and then as the last Earth was forming, something happened with the device, and it destroyed. So it made this weird Earth, and he started going. The comic book store owner started going, well, the Earth's atmosphere. Or he was talking about how it couldn't physically work in the solar system having more than one Earth, and I'm a stupid kid. I don't know any different. So he's like totally crushed my world. I'm like, oh man. So.
I think re-tackle that, Scott, like for your next. Yeah. I want to see you do it like verbatim, but with your like beautiful skills now. Yeah. I think that would actually be amazing.
Well, the thing was, he was totally right, and there's no way that I would have to find some way to do something a little different.
No, don't, like, seriously.
Don't edit it. Just make it exact. Like,
I could be like an axe cop or something.
Yeah.
Here's the comic book I did as a kid. I'm just totally redoing it with that might be that actually might be fun to do.
I think it would be hilarious. It would have kid logic, but like just skill, like the crazy skills you have now, but like and taking the material very seriously.
Yeah.
I want to do this.
I've seen people who I don't remember what it was. Yeah, I think it was Axe Cop, but like they basically took like a script from a kid, and then they made it an entire book.
Yeah, well, it was the writer's younger brother was just basic, or the artist's younger brother was writing the story.
Because kid logic is like magic. There you go, magic.
That actually
writing magic is like. That is one thing I'm currently writing my next comic, and like talk about difficult. Like writing magic systems is like it sounds like it's easy because magic, but it's like no, you have to make rules to magic, and it's like goddamn, like magic is probably like one of the most difficult things for me to write because it's like so not my style. Like I usually write stuff that's like pretty down to earth, so like oh man, like I've been like listening to all these podcasts like how do you do this? Because it's not like science fiction where you're like just rely on the rules of the earth. It's because you're using magic, I don't know.
That's true. And like then even if you do the part that's because magic, you still have to have people convinced that the world is real. That's the main thing, is like have you given them enough to give them that suspension of disbelief? And that's not an easy task. Like,
because then if you do because magic, that's like the same answer as like people who do superheroes doing the because superheroes because now he has a new power. You can't do that. Because Superman, fuck you. Like you can't do that.
Well, that was the whole thinking behind like Superman 2, where they just decided, he's Superman, he can do whatever, so he can pull the emblem off his chest and just throw it at somebody, or they gave him all kinds of crazy powers.
I don't remember like what I just saw like a panel from it because someone was making fun of it, but Superman has like all the powers, and I know that's the joke, but like they were showing, I don't remember like what era it was from, but it was like Superman has a power to make a tiny Superman, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, and you never brought that back? That's like the best power. I would use it all the time.
I actually think that would be great to include, like, at some point in your magic story, you should have that line, because Superman. And that's it. Like, maybe it's characters just like, how did you even cast that spell? And it's like, because Superman. And that's like the one untied thread in the story. I'm sorry, I'm going in a bad direction here. I'm giving you guys great advice for next comic books.
Yeah. I mean, it's all like I hate how like a lot of comic stuff, a lot of people just like avoid the writing aspect, and it's like that's like the hardest part for me. It's like the writing is the comic. Everything else is just like the work. Like drawing it is hard, but that's technical shit. And once you get good at technical shit, you're fine, But like if it's bad from the start, then it's gonna be bad to the end, And like I read this book called Lucky Penny, and I loved the art. It was so cute. The art is amazing. The story, shit. It's so shit. And it made me hate the art because I just associate the art with the shit story.
I used to I used to teach illustration at like a college level, and like I remember one of the first things I would tell my students, and they'd always be like, "Oh," was like, "I don't like you could do like the most perfect rendering on earth of like a duck, and I do not give a shit about that. Like I would rather see you draw a great concept terribly than a conceptless piece, because like." Yeah. And I was saying, and you know, it's mainly talking to people to explain to them how art sells, where it's just like, you know, art without a thought, it just doesn't stay with people. You're not going to remember the guy who like rendered a perfect light bulb, you know. You're going to remember a guy who rendered a concept about a light bulb maybe half as well. And like, to me, it's the same with writing. It's like, if you have like a contentless story, it's just like, it's boring and it's forgettable, you know. No matter how
filler.
It's done.
Yeah. That's like yeah, I kind of agree with that, especially when I see a lot of people who like really idolize realism, like it's the best shit in the world, and I'm like, yeah, but there's a lot of realists who literally paint the picture exactly how the picture is, you know. Yeah. So it's like there's nothing, you're not adding anything amazing to me. Like I'll see somebody who's like maybe like, I don't know, 5 years old who makes something way more creative than that. Like
sure.
It's about like what you're adding and not like how, I mean, technical stuff is beautiful, but at the end of the day, that's not what's intriguing you to the piece.
Technical skill is like, it's like peppering like your soup or whatever. Like your soup is the content, and if the soup's shit, you can make it look as pretty as possible, and it's not going to give anybody anything. You know, yeah. But if you have really good food, and even if the dressing on the food's like terrible, it's like you're still going to digest it and you're going to feel better and healthier for it. You know, it's like that's art. I mean, art is like is making content that's worth consuming. At least I don't know. I get all passionate about this kind of crap, but
yeah, and it's really annoying to me, like when people don't have like a vision of what they want, because I'm like, then you don't necessarily have an idea. You know, like, and a lot of people really don't understand that. Like, and this kind of can get into like the fan art discussion, which I think has been like done to death on this, but I guess I can like briefly touch it. Is like a lot of people who like do fan art, they're not really having a new idea. They're just like I'm talking people who literally, it's almost a tracing, and I'm like, well, what did you add that's different, you know? Like, what is creative about that? Because to me, that's not creativity. That's just like you being obsessed with something and then you painted it instead of it being digital. Wow, so creative. Like, it's annoying.
Whenever I do, you know, do fan art, it's like, I don't know, it's fun, but I don't feel like, I feel it's easy, you know? Because it's like 90% of it is done already for you. You know, you're sure you can put them in different scenarios and you can do different poses or put your own spin or your own style, but it's much harder for me to come up with, you know, an original character than just having my own spin on a fan art character. You know?
Yeah, and like I try to explain like creating characters to people, and then I see their characters, and it's like, you can tell like their influences by their characters, like to the T. Like this is like a big problem. Like people that are like near my age is like there'll be like a popular cartoon out, and then whatever they draw somehow resembles that popular cartoon, and the cartoon will change, and so will their art style or whatever. And I'm like, well, you're not really sticking to any kind of vision. You're just sort of grabbing whatever's popular at that time, and it's like you need to like just be you. I don't know, and it's like the most frustrating crap in the world, because it's like sometimes they're like really talented people, but they just don't know how to make their own ideas.
Well, the thing is, and some of that's just a part of learning if you are young and you're doing that, because I just did a video on sort of style. It was a real short video, so I could have covered much more, but it was real brief. But basically, like what you're talking about, if somebody's watching, because I would do that too. You know, you find an artist you like and you start drawing like them, and then you find another artist you like and start drawing them, and then sooner or later, all those little elements come into play, and then you have something different because you've took bits and pieces from all these different creators that you like, as long as you keep moving on and finding new things. But and that's why the whole video was about, just be patient. Don't worry about finding your style right away. Your style will kind of find you.
Yeah, but I also think, like, I don't know. I've never been so obsessed to the point where, like, my art looked exactly like something, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I would take small things. Like, I don't know. I guess it's just because I can't relate to it. But to me, that's just really strange for you to just basically steal it and, like, not know that you've stolen something. I don't know. It's very odd to me. Like, how can you be unaware that you stole that?
Yeah, I think it's like, to me, so I feel like I'm kind of halfway between both of you, where it's like, I've always, this is my personality. I'm the guy who, like, I picked up a guitar, I might have learned one cover song, and then I started just writing my own songs. Like, and then I'd learn, like, a little chord lick from a song if I liked it, and then I'd try to utilize that with my own song in a different way, but just using, like, whatever it was, like a hammer-on or something like that. And that was with music. It's like with art, it's the same thing, where I pull from, like, artists I liked to be like, how do they do their blacks? Like, I like how they're using their shadows. Or I look at Charles Burns and be like, I like feathering. How do I do that? You know? But I would, like, go look at Charles Burns and be like, okay, I'm gonna draw, like, a luchador, like, you know, in, like, with feathering, because it felt like, well, Charles Burns is already doing that brilliantly. Why would I repeat what he's doing, you know? So it's like, but I do think, Scott, I think you're dead on about the fact that you are kind of like, you are absorbing, and I think before you pin down on a style, it is good to, like, get some foundation first, and be like a sponge and just soak up every style, you know? Because, like, I actually just did a video about this too, because Jan was asking me about, like, I had sent him one of my older comics, and he was like, it's so weird, because you have, like, heavy blacks, and now you're doing, like, cross-hatching and, like, kind of overworking your pages. Like, why do you do that? And I ended up, I'll post it, but I went, like, that sent me on, like, a half an hour discussion about what my mindset was in changing it, and it was literally because, shorthand, like, I just got sick of doing it the Marvel way, where I was simplifying. I was like, no, I'm more neurotic than that. Like, I like to really overwork my pages. I don't have a problem with that. And that goes against what I learned in art school. It goes against what I've heard from other cartoonists. But, like, for me, I really like the results, you know? So I think, but I don't think I would have come to that conclusion without learning how to do it kind of the right way first, and then being like, oh, okay, I don't like this, you know?
Yeah, I get it. It's just sort of like, to me, people who are the ones who, like, are the obsessive ones who, like, basically steal the style. It's like they don't put in the work to, like, you need to have the foundations of art to see why that's not gonna benefit you. And it's, I don't know, it's really weird, because I'm like, you should know better than this if you're in art school. Like, I don't know, it's strange, and it's, I don't know. I just think it's odd how, like, people like that can be successful when they're basically, like, not doing anything new.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you doing? I don't know. It's weird to me.
Yeah, it is. It is weird, and especially when it's like I can understand, like, let's say you're learning comics and you want to know how to control your light and dark, and so you pick up, like, Mike Mignola, and you're like, okay, this guy's a master at this. I'm gonna look at it and study it. But if, like, you just make a bunch of Hellboy prints, you know, congratulations, you made money on somebody else's idea. You're a cover band, you know? Like, and you're never gonna, like, to me, I'm never gonna remember a cover band, like, that much. I might go to a bar and enjoy it for a moment, you know, like, oh, this is a nice cover of Freebird, but I've heard it a million times by 10 other artists, you know? I don't know.
To me, it's like, it's not really practice until you put it in practice with your idea. That's like when it's an actual choice to me. Because it's like, when you do studies, to me, that's just like a bullshit whatever. Like I'll do studies of Michelangelo. Doesn't mean I'm Michelangelo. I don't draw. I don't paint like that. You know, obviously.
So it's like Sistine Chapel prints at art shows.
Oh no! Let me just whip out my Sistine Chapel prints right now. No, like so it's just, to me it's like, yes, like an example would be like I really like Gendy Tartakovsky. Like if you don't, or if you're not familiar, he made like Samurai Jack and all that. Yeah. I love that style. I love the no lines style. I love the limited color palette. I love like all that stuff. I love the super cartooniness. But I'm not super cartoony. I'm actually like, despite it being cartoony, like their anatomy is fairly kind of humanish. Like their faces are a little more cartoony, but their bodies are very technical. They're not like, this is an arm and it's like basically a C shape. No, like it's got like actual form to it. It's like your influences should not be the final result. And it's like, I don't know, to me it's just baffling that it, like, people think that way, and just like, stop it. Because I just think it's so limiting. I don't know. Yeah. It's something that I noticed with I guess with animator people now, which is also why it's just kind of like, I can't relate to this. But that's just kind of how animation is in general, though. You're not drawing in your style, you're drawing in the house style, so I guess that makes sense.
I think it depends, right? Like, if you're in concept, you know, like, that's honestly, like I know you were saying you like seeing the final product, but one of the things I love about, like, looking at concept art for animation is usually, especially the story department, usually see the artist's voice a lot more in it, because they're not like constrained by a style guide like all the in-betweeners are. It's like you actually see this, like, really, like, to me, like, the concept art for Cars is awesome, and the final result of Cars is not as interesting.
Yeah, it's like Frozen. If you see the concept for Frozen, it's like, wow, this looks awesome. Oh, they have Barbie face.
Yeah.
So I get that, but it's also kind of like, you know, the final result in animation is never going to be from. Well, I disagree. You know what? I changed my mind on that, because Book of Life was basically the concept. Like, if you look at the, like, if you've ever seen Book of Life, the animated, the concept art is exactly like how the final is. It's crazy, but that's like one. Most of them kind of are totally not like that at all.
Yeah, there's one of the ones that I love too is like this one called The Illusionist, which is like it's one of the few like traditionally done. It's same animation studio that did Triplets of Belleville, and if you look at like the art in that and like the sequencing and just the character designs and stuff, it's like so particular to that art house, and it's like you can tell the animators actually have their vision shown. Like, to me, that's way more interesting than like Barbie face stuff, you know?
Yeah, but that's like, that's kind of like a difference in like big studio versus small studio, because smaller studio you can actually see, like, because if you've seen the movie, what is it, Song of the Sea?
Yeah.
Like, you can tell like that had a vision, and it's, you know, it stuck to it pretty hardcore. So I don't know. I guess this is just a long-winded answer of like, it just frustrates me when I see people who like don't know what they want. It just frustrates me so much, because all it takes is you to just like experience stuff for yourself to have your own ideas. And if you don't do that, then you don't have your own ideas.
Oh yeah. And like, I think that that's a really good, like, that's kind of like thumbnailing in a weird way. It's like, it's a good idea to like, especially before you delve into like a commitment, like a massive comic, to have an idea of like what you want to say. Because if you don't have like a vision for what you want to communicate, like, I think you're going to end up kind of just like, at most you'll end up with maybe a pretty book, you know? And like, you know, maybe you'll luck out. I don't know. But yeah, that is really cool. I'm always glad to have other artists trash talk fan art. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I can't say I do fan art and I enjoy it, but to me, there's there's like different tiers. Like Will Terry had a video on it, and to me it like summed up exactly what I think about fan art, which is like there's different tiers of like fan art. Yeah. And it's like the bottom tier is just like basically copying everything. Middle tier is like your style, but like just like an action pose or something. And then top tier is like completely redesigning everything, or you know. And I do like middle tier or top tier when I do fan art. Most of the time it's like lazy, so it's middle tier. But most of the middle tier I don't sell, so it's kind of just like, I don't know. It's weird, but
yeah, I'm kind of like that too. Where I don't,
but I see like that mentality of like fan art leak into people's original work, and I just think it's odd.
Yeah.
So I don't know, and I notice it with like the independent comic scene a lot, especially with like romance, which is like pretty bad. But yeah, it's because a lot of people are like, oh, I like this particular anime, so I guess that's my art style, and I'm like, that's super interesting, huh?
Yeah, and like, the art scene isn't like, even the artsy indie stuff is like, I remember when Blankets came out, suddenly like every cartoonist drew like Craig Thompson.
Yeah.
Every graphic novel that came out looked like a Craig Thompson book, and I was like, oh, I think Craig Thompson sort of nailed that, so maybe stop doing that. Like,
well, to me, it's just sort of like you're just putting yourself in a box when you could make something so different.
For sure.
Like, it's hard to describe, but it's also kind of like world building, kind of like a lot of people stick to like a generic world, especially like superhero books, which is just sort of drives me nuts. Every time I see flippin' Spider-Man and he's in generic city number 4, I'm like, oh wow, I wonder where he's at. Like, it's like, why didn't you make the city different? If it's set in like the future, why isn't it more futuristic? Like stuff like that. I'm like, did you even think about it, or did you just go, oh, well, it's Spider-Man, so it's boring, you know? It's just like thinking about your decisions a little more intensely, I think, is the difference between like a good idea and a better idea. I don't know. That's also because I like play D&D, and I'm like, okay, well, what is this campaign like? Because it's, you know, like, is it going to be like this one? Are we going to follow the book or no?
Well, I know we're getting close to 2 hours. Usually.
Sorry.
No. I mean, I could sit and talk about comics all night. We may do that after we go off the air, but you probably have to put a pin in it at some point. But yeah, we'll definitely have to have Holly in again, because I mean, we love all this comic conversations and everything. But we probably need to wrap it up. But again, I wanted to let Holly remind everyone about our Kickstarter that's going on right now, because you only have what, like 10 more days?
I have 9 days. Yeah.
9 days. Okay. So one thing I wanted to ask. So, like I was saying about when you were showing off, when you were saying, oh, I'm thinking about doing these books with where you can do thumbnails in them, and then a week later you have it done. So I imagine it probably won't be too far after your Kickstarter is complete that you'll probably have something in the works or almost ready to go. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yes. Pretty much like by the end of this week, I'm going to start the formatting. And the formatting, like once all the edits are done, the formatting is just sort of like plugging them into a document pretty much, because you basically just place them into the document and just make sure it's not skewed or anyway. So that's not going to be long, but waiting for the rest of the Kickstarter rewards to come in might take long. So I expect the books to be shipped out a month, and that's like an overestimation, but that's about a good estimation, I think. Just overestimate so I don't disappoint people. But yeah, I imagine the books will come in within a month. So
yeah, that's, I mean, and I understand that people, it takes a while to fulfill some of this stuff, but I do like it when you do a Kickstarter and then it's not even like a month later you get your reward. So that should be some incentive for you guys to, if you haven't already, to contribute to Holly's Kickstarter.
Yeah, and again,
before you get it.
If you're like super curious as to what it's about, again, you can like read the entire thing. So if you're that curious, well, you don't have to be.
Yeah. So anyway, so let's go to Josh. Josh, where can everyone find you online?
You can find me at Joshua Kemble under YouTube. Just look up Joshua Kemble, and that's Kemble with a K. I realized I need to start saying that, so that's an unusual spelling. And then the only other thing is just checking out my comic at quarterlystories.com, and then going and contributing to Holly's Kickstarter. So,
yeah.
All right. And so, Holly, where can everyone find you online?
HC Brown on YouTube, and you can just like Google search that. And then you can find all my links through that, including the Kickstarter link.
Yeah, and there will be a Kickstarter link in this video for Holly's Kickstarter, and also a link to her YouTube channel on that, so you can click on that too as well. And as far as the way this thing goes, just so you guys, if you're interested in watching more of these videos, we do have a newsletter, and we don't spam anyone or anything like that. We just try to send something out, like usually if we can, 20 minutes, 20 or 30 minutes before we go live. Sometimes it's closer to 10 minutes, but because we do, the way this works is that it kind of rotates from Josh's channel to my channel, and then we also have like a rotating third chair, which is Holly this week. So next week it'll be somebody else. So if you're interested in that, there's also a link for the newsletter. You can sign up for that, and you will always know when we're gonna broadcast. So, and as far as where you can find me, you're on my YouTube channel. Also, I've got some new stuff on my online store. You can go to circworks.com or madsciencesupplycompany.com, and I've got some new T-shirts like this one that I'm wearing right here. And so yeah, check that out. And anything else anyone wants to say before we sign off?
No.
No? All right. Thanks to everyone in the chat. And if I can remember, I will paste the chat in the description, so if anyone wants to read that. But we will see you guys next week. Later.